Hi everyone, so today is going to be a very quick video because I've already done a video for River Morden, but this is the second video because we officially have prices from the developers. So I think that's the most important thing for yourself if you're thinking to go into River Morden today. Does it make sense to enter with the prices that we've gotten from the developers? Alright, so we'll jump right into the prices that we've seen from the developers. The developers have given us three different pricing. One is the 2-bedroom, which is the 2-bed 1-bath in this case, 538 square feet. And the starting price is from $1.548 million, translating to 2,877 PSF. The 3-bedroom here, smallest we have is 797 square feet, and the starting price is from $2.298 million, translating to a PSF of 2,883. So I think this is quite similar to what we've seen in River Green, Promenade Peak, and Zion Grand. But just for you to note is that these two layouts are all facing River Valley Parcel C and are not the river facing units. And for the 4-bedroom, which is at 1,464 square feet, the prices that we've gotten from developers is they're going to start from $4.588 million, translating to 3,133 PSF. So for all the 4-bedrooms, they are facing the Singapore River. And one thing to note again, for River Morden, the second floor will start from level 5 because the buildings are a little bit elevated. So you pretty much will have perpetual views towards the Singapore River. But if you want more information on the development where I go through each individual floor plan, you can watch the previous video because what I will be sharing here is just going to be the pricing. So now we're just diving into the three floor plans with the indicative pricing. The first one, the 2-bedroom at 538 square feet. This is where the $1.58 million layout would be for. 3-bedroom is 797 square feet. This one comes without an enclosed kitchen, still giving you the additional 3rd bedroom, which would be important for families who's looking for an affordable entry into River Valley. And lastly is the 4-bedroom, so this comes in at a good size at 1,464 square feet. So to help us better with this analysis, we're going to deep dive into projects with over 400 units in the River Valley area, so they compare a little bit more apple to apple with River Morden. So in this case, if you see from the graph, these developments are usually the younger developments such as Martin Morden, Irwell Hill Residences, and the upcoming sites such as River Green and Zion Grand. So for the price estimation, we now know that the developers has given us an indicative for units facing River Valley Green and also Kim Seng Park, which is actually quite close to my own estimation in the previous video that I've done. So what we will do here is to add again 200 PSF to those unit types. For example, the 2-bedroom is starting from about 2,877. We're going to add 200 PSF to that for the 2 bedrooms facing the river, because this is how we've seen the developer Guacoland has done their pricing in recent projects such as Lentor Morden, where we have units facing the landed enclave and units facing another development. So we start with the 2-bed 1-bath here, knowing that our 538 square feet 2-bed 1-bath will start from $1.548 million. How does this stack up with the neighbors? If we compare it to River Green and Zion Grand, our starting price is definitely a little bit higher, but something to note is that there are no more availabilities for 2-bed 1-bath in these two developments. And for River Morden, our 2-bed 1-bath actually features a 3-meter wall-to-wall distance in the living room, which is something that's very, very rare and hard to find in a 2-bed 1-bath. So what the developer River Morden really prioritizes here is actually the living space in the dining room and the living room. So knowing that we might be a little bit more expensive as compared to some of our neighboring developments that has sold last year, we also can look into Irwell Hill Residences, which is a development that's not directly connected to the MRT, but also about 5 minutes walk away from us. So for Irwell Hill, their size is actually from about 603 square feet to 624 square feet. But this is a non-harmonized development. So if we factor in River Morden with the harmonization, it should be about 560 square feet thereabouts. And for Irwell Hill, their 2-bed 1-bath have already transacted from in the range of 1.5 all the way to $1.84 million. And this is just transactions that's done across the past 12 months. So we can see that people are already buying in and accepting this pricing for a 2-bed 1-bath. So if you're buying in below that mark between about 1.58 to 1.7 plus, I still think that you are still relatively safe. You still do have a buffer for exit in the future, because if people are already paying for these prices for a resale development, in the future, River Morden is going to be newer, closer to the MRT. So I think that our attributes and our resaleability is a bit stronger also. Now for the 2-bed 2-bath, we have a couple of different layouts here: 646, 678, and 689. For the 646 square feet, I expect the developers to start the pricing from $1.8 million thereabouts, because I'm using the same PSF as the 2-bed 1-bath. But for the 2-bed 2-bath, 678 and 689, these units are going to be facing the river. So I've added a 200 PSF sort of buffer. So units there should start from about $2.08 million. So if we look into the entry price for this against River Green, Promenade Peak, and Zion Grand, we are definitely coming in a little bit higher, which is why if we are looking at the 2-bed 2-bath, my priority will be to look at the bigger units, the 678 and the 689. If we look into the 646 square feet, I would say that despite it being quite an efficient layout, the kitchen placement is not super ideal, because you're stepping into the kitchen as you're going into the unit. And I think that in terms of our comparison right here, River Green has an enclosed kitchen. Promenade Peak, the kitchen is tucked nicely to the side. Irwell Hill has an enclosed kitchen as well. Martin Morden, yes, the kitchen is tight to the side, but then you get a bigger floor area. So in this case, to make ourselves a little bit more competitive to the rest of our neighbors, in terms of the resaleability, I would say to look at the 678 square feet, because this is where you have sort of a nice dumbbell layout, which is quite traditional in the new launch market today. And the kitchen is tucked nicely to the side. As you step in, you don't feel like it's a very narrow passageway as you come into the unit. And I think that from the price point of $2 million for a perpetual unblocked view of the Singapore River, I think that there's still some sort of like emotional factor for the resale buyers that are coming in for the 2-bed 2-bath. So this would be my preference for the 2-bed 2-bath if you're looking for, let's say, an investment. But of course, if you're looking for an own stay and just want to enter into River Valley, then I would say the 2-bed 1-bath actually is quite ideal. Personally, I would try to avoid the 2-bed 2-bath at 646 square feet for now. So next, we move on to the 3-bed 2-bath. So we have 4 layouts here at River Morden, one at 797, one at 829, 893, and 904. So for 797 square feet and 829 square feet, these are facing River Valley Parcel C. So I've used 2,883, which is the indicative that developer has given us for these units. So for the 797, this starts at 2.298. This is the official guide price. And for the 893 square feet and 904, they face the Singapore River. So for the 893, if you're looking for a Singapore River facing, adding about 200 PSF onto 2883, the starting price will be about 2,753,118, and this is for the Singapore River facing 3-bedroom. And if we compare it with Zion Grand, Irwell Hill, and River Green, we will see that the prices here quite fair if we're just talking about an entry for a 3-bed 2-bath into the River Valley area. Our prices is actually quite competitive, and I expect this unit type to be very popular because of people who might be looking for school. If their family trying to move into the River Valley area, then 3-bedroom is pretty much the minimum that they'll be looking at. And if you compare to Martin Morden, they do have a more sizable 3-bed 2-bath, and then they are already transacting at about $2.68 to $3 million. So we do know that if our entry today, anywhere between about 2.3 to 2.7, I would still say is quite protected by the transactions that's already happening around us. Of course, if you're here for the views, then you have to factor in a higher entry price, potentially looking at the 893 square feet unit. And this is expected to start, based on my estimation, will be from about $2.75 million onwards. And then we talk about the 3-bedroom premium. The premium layouts are typically even more popular because they have a utility room, a storeroom, a yard room. And in the case of River Morden, they will have a flex room. So the smallest flex room unit will start from 1098 and then 1109. Both of these will face the Singapore River. And the starting price will be from 3.385 or about $3.4 million for the respective layouts. This is also based on my calculation, adding 200 PSF to what the developer has given us. And if you look into Zion Grand and Martin Morden, they'll be the more accurate examples. Martin Morden prices have already sold over $4 million. And then for Zion Grand, it's from about 2.9 to 3.6. And also not forgetting Irwell Hill, the 3-bedroom premium there when sold by the developers have all transacted over 3.5 to maybe even $3.6 million. There's no resale transactions for the 3-bedroom premium from Irwell Hill yet, but likely they will launch also closer to the $4 million price point. So if you talk about the overall entry, if you want to be facing the Singapore River, River Morden will definitely be your only choice because one, Martin Morden, it's also more expensive, a little bit older. Irwell Hill will definitely launch a little bit higher as well. And then you only have Zion Grand, which has sold out for a 3-bedroom premium, partly due to also the landscape living and dining, which River Morden is featuring here. So I do expect River Morden 3-bedroom premium to still be very, very competitive. Just that I would say if you're looking for a short-term flip, then maybe the 3-bedroom premium is not so ideal because you might take some time to see capital appreciation. You will very much be in a safer position if you look into the 3-bedroom 2-bathrooms from an entry price perspective. And lastly, it is the 4-bedroom. So the developers has given us the indicative for the 4-bedroom to start from $4.588 million, translating to 3,133 PSF. But that's not the biggest size because that's for the 1,464 square feet 4-bedroom. Our biggest 4-bedroom here starts from 1,830 square feet. So if using the same PSF, this would translate to a purchase price of close to $5.8 million. So does that make sense? Let's take a look at the quick numbers. If you look at River Green, cannot really compare River Green because the 4-bedroom there is much smaller, below 1,000 PSF. Promenade Peak, we have seen transactions from $4.49 to $5.5 million. Quite comparable. Zion Grand from about $4 million to $5.5 million as well. Irwell Hill from the 4.3 mark to 5.5. But you can see that even on the upper limit, these unit sizes are not as big as the River Morden one. So at 1,830 square feet, it's really in the league of its own. The only comparable, I would say the layout is quite similar to Martin Morden because they are by the same developers. But even for Martin Morden, the biggest size is close to 1,800 only. So there's a slight difference. River Morden still comes in at slightly bigger size. So I would say the only apple-to-apple comparison, if you take a look at the biggest 4-bedroom layout here, would be Martin Morden. But for Martin Morden, the purchase price that we've seen in the past 12 months is anywhere between 4.8 to about $5.1 million. So your entry price, yes, could be actually a little bit lower, but one, what you're giving up is the Singapore River view, and secondly, you need to know that Martin Morden is actually about 10 years old already, so you have to factor in the lease as well, and if it kind of balances out. If you're buying into a new development, you get something completely new, and you have the river facing also, so that's definitely the edge for River Morden. And if you look at the smaller 4-bedroom, I would say for the smaller 4-bedroom, our entry is rather fair if you compare to the newer developments that's coming up in the area. So then that's really going to be dependent on your ballot number. From what we've seen from last year, if you look at Sky at Holland, Zion Grand, Promenade Peak, the bigger unit types, despite the quantum, has been moving quite fast. So I think in the River Valley area where people traditionally value space, I think the 4-bedroom will be quite a hit as well. And so we'll just have to see during the preview, during the launch, how it fares. But for now, what do you think about the pricing? Comment down below and let me know. And if you want to take a look at the show flat will start on the 4th day of Chinese New Year, which is the 20th of February, all the way to the 1st of March for you to come and take a look, for you to express your interest before it launches on the 7th of March. So if you don't want to miss out on this next Guaco Land icon, I would say developer Guaco Land has been steadily building up its credibility over the past few years. So they have really established themselves as quite a reputable, a trusted developer. So if you don't want to miss that, and especially if today you are also a Guaco Land property owner, this might be the one that you want to come in because there's some privileges for you. And if you're undecided but would like more information, you can also reach out to me via my WhatsApp number. I can share with you the floor plans. I can share with you the price analysis based on your needs, because everybody's needs and objectives is really different. And also I can arrange for a show flat viewing for you and we can head down to the show flat together. That's all from me today. That's it. This is a quick sharing because the prices would release after I did my previous video. But if you want a deeper sort of like dive into River Morden, you can also take a look at my previous video to get a little bit more information. And yeah, I'll see you again. Bye.